Union Carpenters in Northern California. So I don't forget, I want to introduce as well my partner in the state, Pete Rodriguez, from the Southwest Regional Council of Carpenters. Momentous day, and big thank you to the governor. Early on, we heard the call from the governor and his team, bring housing solutions. Don't just identify the problems. And we look for partners to do that very thing, and so excited for this day to happen and to be part of that solution. You know, it's no secret to anyone here, but speaking from the carpenter perspective, and I would argue for the working class overall, the housing crisis in California goes way beyond just the lack of housing. It affects the working class so much that it's led to the transportation crisis, the child care crisis, and ever-escalating suicide and addiction rates in the construction industry. And we are here to say enough's enough. And I want to thank our legislative leaders who stood up and led and helped break that logjam in Sacramento. We all had to put everything into it, and to have so many housing bills signed today, right, is very important to move that production. But specifically, obviously, housing for working people and production of housing and taking out the barriers of the broken entitlement systems and over-politically approaching housing in different cities is crushing us in the state of California. So the passage of AB 2011 and the push for other housing bills, we see two things going on. One, housing, obviously production, but also to address what's happening to the over 300,000 non-union housing workers in the state of California being hyper-exploited. We refer to it at the Carpenters as a crime scene of production. And with this bill that's getting signed today, there's enforcement standards to help those workers raise up and help themselves and pull them in to the union standards. And we're proud to be part of that. I want to give a special thank you to Buffy Wicks, our real partner in crafting this. But the coalition was broad and it had depth. And it was a lot of, like I said earlier, some good healthy debate and good arguments going on to get this done today and the package to get passed. And we're proud to support it, proud to stand behind it. And again, proud to support our governor, who from the very beginning of his administration has fought for housing, and every positive move forward has been all in. And so it took all of us to get it done. And now let's build some housing. Let's put our hand out, put our resources out, and help pull those workers up into the middle class, and let's get it done. It is my honor to introduce another very hard worker in the legislature, Senator McGuire. If you could please come up. I'm abusing the mic. I got to tell you, many late nights, this guy works on behalf of the state, and we recognize it and we appreciate it. Thank you so much for your leadership.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Bradshaw. It's wonderful to see you, and good morning. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to Senator Wiener and Assemblymember Haney for hosting us here in beautiful San Francisco. Thank you so much. I think that we can all agree that the housing crisis in this state is one of the greatest in our state's history. The crisis threatens the long-term viability of our communities, big and small, in every corner of the Golden State. It's also one of the biggest threats to California's economy, which is the 5th largest in the world. Californians, who are at the heart of the economy, our workforce, can't afford to live in the state that they love. 78% of extremely low-income Californians pay more than half of their annual income towards their rent. Lack of affordable housing is one of the driving forces behind our homelessness crisis. And only about 25% of all Californians can afford to buy a home in the Golden State. I think that we can all agree why we're here today. We know that this is not sustainable nor acceptable. And this morning represents a turning point for California. A turning point that will, number one, speed up the process to get dirt moved and housing built, cutting bureaucratic red tape. 2, the bills that are going to be signed by the governor today, and thank you, Mr. Governor, will drive down the cost of development and also revitalize urban centers and small downtowns. And today's action is going to create thousands upon thousands of jobs that will pay family-sustaining wages. I'm gonna end it right here and say this. Doing anything that is big or consequential in the legislature isn't easy, and it could be messy. But at the end of the day, all sides came together to get the job done. Put aside their differences, put aside politics to ensure housing gets built. We owe a debt of gratitude to the Senate President, Toni Atkins, for her relentless and lifelong focus on housing needs. We're here today because Speaker Anthony Rendon in the Assembly drove this action, and we are grateful for his work as well. And of course, to the governor. The governor, this guy is the real deal, working day in and day out to make California more livable and affordable for every Californian. We also need to say thank you to the leaders of unionized workers across this state. First and foremost, we want to say thank you to Andrew Meredith, President of the State Building Trades Council. We want to say thank you to Jay Bradshaw and Pete Rodriguez from the Carpenters Council, and Scott Wetch, who represents plumbers and electricians from across this state. We owe a debt of gratitude to Senator Caballero and Assemblymember Wicks, who never gave up. They never gave in. They never stopped working to get SB 6 in 2011 passed and homes built. And again, Mr. Governor, thank you for your leadership. You got us here today and got it across the line. It is now my pleasure to introduce the chairwoman who oversees the Assembly Budget Committee that advances housing in the state. Can we please give a round of applause to Ms. Wendy Carrillo?
Thank you and buenos dias. Good morning. My name is Wendy Carrillo. I proudly represent the new 52nd Assembly District, which includes the communities of Northeast LA and East Los Angeles. And as a member of the Assembly Committee on Housing and the chair of the Assembly Budget Committee on SUP 4, which oversees funding for housing and homelessness initiatives, it's really an honor to join you in this great event, this great bill signing. The budget cycle alone in this year, we have allocated an unprecedented $5 billion in investments to programs to address the biggest crisis that our state faces, housing and homelessness. We see it every day in encampments right in our own community. I saw it getting off, coming to the airport and coming to this location today. And based on the latest numbers of unhoused residents in LA County, and I know that I'm in San Francisco and this is Giants territory, but I just want to talk a bit about what's going on in LA County, the biggest of the 58 counties in the entire state. More than 69,000 people every day experience homelessness in LA County alone at any given night. About 26,000 of which identify as Latinos. That is a 26% increase since 2020. In communities like mine, massive gentrification, increase in rents, and unattainable home prices contribute to a race to the bottom. Our growth for housing needs to account for everyone, and the effects of policy should be an equitable one across communities. To that end, it is a privilege to stand with the governor today, Assemblymember Wicks, Senator Caballero, my colleagues in the legislature, our friends in labor, and many others to commemorate the signing of these two historic pieces of legislation. And even more so, I'm so honored to have been on the very early conversations with Assemblymember Wicks on AB 2011 in the Assembly to ensure that the conversations necessary with labor were happening across the board. Those were very difficult, challenging, fun conversations, but important to have when we talk about bringing everyone to the table. And when we think about labor, as mentioned, teachers, electricians, carpenters, nurses, home care workers, janitors, all deserve to, one, live in dignity, and most importantly, be able to afford the communities that they grew up in and be able to live in those communities and thrive. AB 2011 and SB 6 exemplify the extraordinary vision that can be achieved when labor organizations, affordable housing partners, and environmental justice activists come together and achieve a common goal. Thank you to our governor for your leadership, and also a big thank you for your wise decision to appoint Secretary Lourdes Castro Ramirez in her role. We do a lot of great work together. That's a wise choice from a wise Latina. And a special thank you and recognition to Speaker Anthony Rendon, who leads with the way that the chairs of the committees are able to lead in a direction that is needed. And a special thank you to Senator Pro Tem Tony Atkins for being a partner in this endeavor as we move much needed policy forward. Unas pocas palabras en español. Mi nombre es Wendy Carrillo y yo orgullosamente represento el nuevo Distrito 52 en la ciudad de Los Ángeles, que representa el noreste y el este de Los Ángeles. Como miembro del Comité de Vivienda de la Asamblea y también miembro del presupuesto estatal, Comité número 4, que administra los fondos necesarios estatalmente para iniciativas de vivienda y programas para personas sin hogar. Solo en este presupuesto de este año hemos hecho una inversión de 5 billones de dólares para programas necesarios para este problema tan grande a través del Estado. Los últimos números de residentes sin hogar solo en el condado de Los Ángeles dicen que más de 69,000 personas se quedan sin hogar cada noche. El condado de Los Ángeles es el más grande a través del estado, son 58 condados, y en eso más de 29,000 personas se identifican como latinos. Esto es un aumento de 26% desde el año 2020. En comunidades como la mía, la gentrificación, el aumento de las rentas, los altos precios para comprar casas contribuyen a una situación económica que excluye a muchos. Nuestro crecimiento estatal de viviendas debe de llevar en cuenta a todos y los efectos de leyes deben de ser equitativos a través de las comunidades y a través del Estado. Con ese fin, es un privilegio acompañar al gobernador, al asambleísta Wicks, la senadora Caballero, a todos los colegas de la legislatura y a muchos de nuestros aliados en los sindicatos para firmar estas dos piezas de legislación hoy. Aún más me siento honrada de haber asegurado las conversaciones necesarias con los sindicatos a través del Estado para asegurarnos que esas conversaciones fueran adelante. Porque al fin del día, maestros, enfermeras, trabajadores de custodia, trabajadores de cuidado en casa, todo tipo de trabajo merece dignidad y cada trabajador merece tener una vivienda con dignidad y respeto y poder vivir en comunidades donde ellos crecieron. Las leyes de hoy, AB 2011 y SB6, son ejemplos de la visión que se puede lograr cuando las organizaciones laborales, los socios de vivienda asequibles y los activistas de justicia ambiental se unen para lograr un objetivo que todos creemos a través del Estado. Muchas gracias al gobernador Newsom por su liderazgo, al presidente de la Asamblea, Anthony Rendon, y la presidenta del Senado, Tony Atkins, por su liderazgo a través de este año y por estas piezas de legislación que son tan importantes para nuestro Estado. Y ahora, and I guess I'll switch back to English, but it is my great honor and pleasure to introduce to you what many say is a division between the Dodgers and the Giants, the great state senator from the Central Valley, Ana Caballero.
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle.
Yeah. Sheesh, I am going to need those glasses too. You know, what it does is it totally blanks out your paper, so hopefully I can see here. Well, thank you very much for that great introduction. My name is Ana Caballero, and I hail from the city of Merced. I'm really pleased to be here with you today. I want to thank Assemblymember Carrillo for that introduction. I'm not sure where I fall exactly. If you look at the Central Valley, sometimes we're with the Giants, sometimes we're with the Dodgers. I grew up in Southern California, so I'm kind of a Dodger fan because of my dad. So just got to say, my father, may he rest in peace. I know, that's exactly right. So I'm very, very pleased to be here in this beautiful city. There isn't a better place, I think, to talk about housing and the need for housing and how people need to work together in order to make things happen. I want to thank Assemblywoman Wicks for her partnership on this issue. Without her commitment and support, we would not be here today. Congratulations on the signing of your companion bill, AB 2011. I would like to thank Senate Majority Leader Mike McGuire. I don't know if you've ever had an opportunity to work with Mike McGuire towards a goal, but he is fearless, indomitable, and kind of cuts through things. I won't use his language, but but he's a great asset in the Senate. And I also want to appreciate and thank the Senate Pro Tem Atkins for her tireless efforts and support to help negotiate a compromise and to keep the dialogue going so that we could tackle an issue that has eluded us for so long. SB 6 is one critical piece of solving California's severe housing crisis, and I'm humbled to be here today to celebrate the bill signing into law. I especially want to thank the California State Building Trades Council and the Carpenters for their commitment to working men and women who build homes. SB 6 ensures that these workers are protected and paid a fair wage, and that the workforce on these projects are skilled and trained. Furthermore, I would like to thank the governor for his commitment to finance the construction of more housing all over the state, and to assist local governments to expedite the planning process and give more Californians an opportunity for home ownership. I have been involved in helping to push the building of housing units for many, many years. And I will tell you, the most humbling and exciting opportunity that I have ever participated in is not just the groundbreaking or seeing the sticks go into the ground, but it's seeing the families receive a key. And I know I've talked about this before, but there is nothing like seeing children realize for the first time in their life that they're going to have a room of their own. I live in rural California, and so many of our families are living 2 and 3 and 4 families in 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. And what that means is there's no quiet space, there's no time when there aren't lots of people around, and the ability for those families to actually move into something that fits the size of the family, where they can afford to pay the rent or afford to pay the mortgage is really very, very moving. So if you've never had an opportunity to see that, please do it, because it will fundamentally change your perception of what's going on in our housing industry and what we need to do in order to reward families for their hard work. These are hardworking people, right? And they deserve to be able to have safe and affordable and decent housing. And so the great thing about the bills that we worked on is that they create an opportunity for local governments to decide exactly where they want to be able to build the housing, to be able to convert commercial and retail property that is no longer functioning. The strip malls and the malls that we have in our community, where the stores are leaving permanently, the Sears, the Toys R Us, the JCPenney's, the Kmart's, they're closing, and a building such as this. There is nothing that's going to take the place here commercially, and so the ability to actually transform the property and to do it in an expedited way, put people to work, make sure that their labor is protected, is invaluable. And so I couldn't have gotten here without the really hard work and dedication of Assemblymember Wicks. We both stayed at the table. We brought everybody to the table to talk about how we could get this done. And in the end, if you can get everybody, and it's all the interests that are here in California, to keep from shooting each other, and I mean that kind of, literally. When we go to the floor and there are big floor fights, it's hard. It makes it very, very very difficult. But if everybody says, I'm okay, but I'm not thrilled, if everybody gets something, then it's a victory. And this is going to be critically important. And the fact that we had the governor's office supporting us, we had our leadership supporting us, we had negotiators who were relentless and persistent, made it possible for us to be here today. So I want to thank everyone for their commitment to California. This is a commitment to California, a commitment to equity and to fairness, and a commitment to building in a way that is sustainable, that creates livable walkable villages, and that is transformational to the state of California. So thank you very much for being here today. Thank you for all of your votes. There are lots of colleagues that are here today. You took some tough votes, and I know that both of us appreciate very, very much those tough votes. But we're gonna see a change in California, and I'm proud to have been part of that change. So now, without any further ado, I'm gonna call up Assemblymember Buffy Wicks.
How y'all doing? So they say victory has a lot of fathers, it also has a lot of mothers, it turns out. My name is Buffy Wicks, as mentioned, and I represent the beautiful East Bay, Oakland, Berkeley, Richmond area. And when I first got elected, I dove headfirst into housing. Simple topic to work on. And it's been the major part of my focus of my legislative work now in my fourth year. And I really just wanted to jump in and work with these great colleagues. And I want to also give a shout out to Scott Wiener, who's created a lot of this space for us to have these really difficult conversations. And I dove into this in part because of my own experience growing up. You know, I grew up in a trailer park. You know, I don't come from a lot. And my family, my parents saved up money and after a couple years bought a little plot of land, and after a couple decades built their dream home when I was in college. And it was because of this housing security that I was eventually able to have in my house, and things like our California community college system that really enabled me to go from a working class life to a middle class life. And for so many of our future generation, that is not an opportunity that is currently available. And this disproportionately impacts communities of color, and we know that. And that is why when I was named housing chair about 10 months ago, I wanted to work arm in arm with so many of my colleagues here and really work to create a center of gravity around how we could have transformative, bold change on our housing policy and our housing politics here in California. And I'm doing this because I know you all agree with this. It is not okay that we have one of the lowest homeownership rates in the country. It is not okay that 73% of single moms are facing housing insecurity. It's not okay that we have 163,000 homeless people on our streets every single night in one of the most prosperous states in the nation. It's not okay that we need 3.5 million more homes to serve our communities. It's not okay that our realtors in the Bay Area say, drive till you qualify. That should not be their motto. It's not okay that I have teachers in my district in Oakland who were born and raised in Oakland, who are driving 4 hours round trip to teach in the school with which they want to teach because that's the neighborhood they're from, because they're living in Tracy or beyond. That contributes to our climate change issues. It contributes to a degradation in terms of their quality of life. It's not good for the city of Oakland. It's not good for the communities in which they can't spend any time in. And so that is why I chose to work in collaboration and to create a real coalition around AB 2011. And I want to talk a little bit about the coalition because I come from community organizing, and in community organizing, what you're trying to do is bring together shared interests and create more power to create the structural change that you want to see. And this is a diverse coalition, I can assure you. So I want to give some thanks and also recognize a broad coalition. I know I was supposed to only have 2 minutes, Governor, but the thanks are going to be broad. So, the Carpenters Union. So I have never worked with sponsors like the Carpenters Union before. These guys throw down, and they have a singular purpose. And they are mission-driven on that purpose. And the purpose of this bill was to ensure that the workers building this housing have prevailing wage, have access to health care, that we grow the union workforce here in California. And as Jay Bradshaw says, that it's not a crime scene here. We have to lift up these workers. And what AB 2011 does is it creates a floor that everyone has to adhere to if you want to use AB 2011, union or non. And we should want all of our workers to be paying that prevailing wage. So they were huge in the success of this. The California Housing Consortium, Marina Wyant, who spoke earlier, and Ray Pearl, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. They got together with the union and said, what can work here? What can the developers and the unions agree to so that we can have a framework so we can actually build this housing, so we can use AB 2011 as a useful tool? SEIU, we heard from David Huerta. And when I talk to SEIU, they say, listen, our workers are sleeping in their cars. They need housing. That is not okay. So their voice and their fight in this was critical. CSEA, the School Employees Union, similar situation in terms of their workforce. They were at the table every day fighting on this bill. California YIMBY, who's created a grassroots movement around the state of California saying, yes, in my backyard. The Apartment Association, these guys have like lobbying champions who are there, working members saying, we've got to do this, we've got to build more apartments, people need more places to live. The realtors, the Bay Area Council, Spur, United Way, AARP, Urban Footprint, Peter Calthorpe, who was the original vision around big parts of this bill, as well as Facebook, who funded a lot of the research. It was a diverse coalition. And what this bill does is it reimagines what our cities can look like. It says, you know what, we have an abundance of retail space. We have an abundance of office parks that are no longer being utilized, and we have a real deficit of housing. Let's use that land for what it should be for, homes, so people have housing security. It protects our workers. It helps reach our climate change goals. We are going to reach our climate change goals because of our housing policy and our transportation policy. I also want to thank many of the members who are here today who either took tough votes early on in the process, like my committee members, Ms. Carrillo, who was there at the very beginning, Ms. Sharon Cork-Silva, who's been a champion in housing for years before I got here. We've got Rob Rivas, who was a co-author, Blanca Rubio, who was a co-author, Matt Haney, who has come in as one of our newer members, who is leading on this charge, Carlos Villaputa, who's a joint author as well. We've got so many great folks here. Richard Bloom, oh my gosh, I can't forget Richard Bloom, who did this bill, similar bills prior years to me, and who really led the way in this. Mark Berman, who came on as a co-author as well. We've had so many great leaders in this space in the legislature, creating a real center of gravity around it, which has been really absolutely critical. Senator McGuire, I think Senator Caballero described you brilliantly. This man is dogged. And I say this as someone who is similar, right? The tenacity that he has, I mean, it is incredibly impressive, and he was there every single step of the way helping to negotiate this. And I also want to give a huge shout out to my senator counterpart, Senator Caballero. The great thing about working with her is I think she and I really, through this process, developed a real level of trust around understanding that we have the same shared mission. We have the same goals. And that if we work together, if we strive together, if we bring folks together, we can all achieve those goals. And it was just tremendous to have her as a part in all of this. And I also want to thank the building trades, because I know that we share the same values. And I know that we are going to work together collaboratively to solve these problems together. So I appreciate their honest conversation. I want to continue that dialogue on this honest conversation, because we still have to solve this problem. And I also want to thank, and this doesn't happen often, but thank the staff who worked on these bills. Steve Wertheim and Lisa Engel from my committee staff, we were just at some points on like an 8-hour Zoom where we were just working and then just popping on Zoom and just constantly mind melding together to make sure we could get this over the finish line. I want to thank the Senate Pro Tem for her leadership for years in this space and her commitment to ensuring that we build the housing that we need. And I want to thank Speaker Anthony Rendon for his continued backbone and pushing to ensure that we have great labor standards and good housing production bills coming out of the Assembly. And lastly, I want to thank who I'm about to introduce. Come on up here. I want to thank this guy, Governor Gavin Newsom.
I actually brought the bills with me just in case. Thank you. There you go.
So, as you all know, this man is not afraid to run directly into the flames. And on tough, big, hard issues. And he tells it like it is. And on housing, he's been such a housing production champion, funding so much important funding for affordable housing, more than any other governor in the history of this state. I'm honored to get his signature moments from now.
This is a good way of doing it. I mean, this is smart.
So, I want to thank you for your leadership and for your signature.
Well done, Bubby. Thank you, everybody. I was trying to think, after listening to all of you, if there's a preposition, an adverb that hasn't been said that I can offer, an insight, a perspective, a nod, expression of gratitude. I think you covered, all of you, and appropriately, the many, many people that are responsible for this moment. And this is a moment on a journey to reconcile the original sin. The original sin in the state of California, and that's the issue of housing and affordability. It touches more things in more ways on more days than any other issue. It is at the core of the expression of so much of the frustration many of us have about our state and our future and the fragility of the moment we're living in. Our competitiveness, our ability to solve so many challenging issues. It's not lost on me that there are a bunch of kids right outside this room as we're competing with their joy, with our own. I think I ran for mayor here in San Francisco, making the point that needs to be made that there were more dogs in San Francisco than there were children, because we couldn't afford to raise families in the city and county of San Francisco because of this issue. It has been a stubborn issue, decade after decade after decade, just fighting and talking about it and fighting each other in the process. Meanwhile, folks started moving out. Folks started thinking about moving out. Folks got kicked out. Folks ended out on the streets and sidewalks in record numbers because we couldn't get out of our own way. At the end of the day, society becomes how we behave. We are our behaviors. End of the day, got no one else to blame but ourselves. It happened on our watch, all of this. And I say that to make this point that we all have to reconcile that. We need to all be a little bit more accountable to this crisis of affordability. And I think what makes today a special day is this is a big moment as we begin, in the spirit of all the comments that were made, to take responsibility, not to give the same speech and expect the same applause, but to begin to do something about it. And these sets of bills, there's 38 bills I'm signing today. I'm just going to spare you 36 I'll do privately. I'll focus on the two big ones that unite us all here at the podium. But this is a big package. These bills matter. They go across the spectrum, not just what we've talked about, but it goes to issues of ADUs, goes to the issue of farm worker housing, goes to the issue, Ben, thank you, of transparency and accountability. Accountability. Because the biggest issue now we have is not the issues that are being resolved today as it relates to land use and CEQA and streamlining and prevailing wage and skilled and trained and all the related issues, including, thank you, Assemblywoman, financing and state support. $14 billion just in the last 2 years, specifically for state support of affordable housing. It's now about results. And that's where I go back with my mayoral hat on. I've said it 100 different times in 100 different ways. Localism's determinative. That the state vision will be realized at the local level. Cities and communities all across this state. And that's where we need to see results. That's where we need to see accountability. We need to see them drive this. We got the tools now. And I don't say that as a warning. I say that sternly, directionally. Ask the folks down in Huntington Beach. Ask the folks here in San Francisco. That letter that HCD sent, it's not because we don't love you. It's because we love you. And you're going to see more of that until we see more housing, more production, more folks working, growth and inclusion. And I think that's a mantra. Prevailing wage, skilled and trained, that's about inclusion. We've focused so often about growth, we've forgotten this part of it. And so I love to be part of this. I want this photo. Jay, congratulations, man. It's amazing what the Carpenters were able to do. Andrew and Abstentia and the trades, thank you. My brother Larry, it's good to see you as always. It's good to see us all up here. Remarkable leadership by Buffy Wicks. Remarkable leadership by Buffy Wicks. She never took no for an answer. Ever. Senator Caballero, another remarkable leader who's, we were just at the podium, and big round of applause for Wendy. For Senator Caballero, I'm going to talk about Wendy. Thank you as well. For driving this path and creating a pathway. And I appreciate both of you recognizing Senator Atkins and recognizing Speaker Rendon, because they create the conditions that create the pathways to make this possible. To all your colleagues, it's amazing. How many of you showed up? By the way, bipartisan group of folks. That's right. Which is remarkable as well. And I'm grateful for each and every one of you taking the time to be here. You all belong here, and you all come up here in a moment when we sign these bills. Look, we're producing some results, and now we need to see them manifested. And I just want to, again, express gratitude in closing, not just for this, but I hope folks have paid a little attention to what's been going on in this state in the last few months. It was a week ago we signed a package of bills, and and this gets to Senator McGuire, who's just been appropriately recognized for being the rock star that he is. We last week had the opportunity to sign an unprecedented package of climate bills. And I love that we talked in terms of that integration here today as it relates to housing, jobs linkage, as it relates to climate and housing, all these policies being interrelated. But that package was foundational and determinative in terms of setting a new tone and tenor in terms of California's leadership. This package on housing, the work we've done together on homelessness, I know you want to see the results of that. But this legislature, what they've done, what they've accomplished, there's no legislature in this country like the California legislature. And I mean that. These folks get it, but here's the difference. They get it done. I have the privilege of working with them, and I cannot impress upon you more how proud I am for their example and their faith and devotion to this cause we hold dear, and that's California. And so I say that as a point of pride, not as governor, but as a guy who lives here, that I'll put these folks up against any legislature in the United States of America. Our legislature deserves a big round of applause collectively for all they've done this year. I mean it. So, to all of you, thank you. I'm not going to take any more time. You're all exhausted, and we're out of time. But I do want to ask the members of the legislature to come on up because we've got to make room for them. Senator Wiener, notably included.
Wait, I know what you want.
Jay. Hey, Jay, you get up here, man.
Stop talking, you gotta.
Get up, Larry, get up here. Get up. Danny, you good? David, SCIU, get in here.
Come on, David.
Scott better be up here. Scott, get up here, man. Gotta get in. IBW.
Yay, we're right by you.
Hello. Congratulations. Can we?
I know.
I know. It's still,
I
you
know.
can never say sorry enough. All right, let's do a big smile first.
Legislature's looking at Jeff.
All right, these are the actual bills, so let me sign them, but I'm gonna hand them to someone before we lose them.
Yeah, don't lose them, please.
Yeah. Which one is this? 2011. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And SB 6. Now law in California. Well done, everybody. Now, everybody's here to answer questions, if you have any. Great job.
Hi, Dustin Gardner from the San Francisco Chronicle. Governor, several of the bills you signed deal with carve-outs to CEQA. You've spoken several times in recent months about wanting to see broad reform to CEQA because it is hampering various projects throughout the state. What type of broader reform would you like to see, and how would you get it done?
Well, I think we're advancing reforms here today. Land use reforms, ministerial as of right zoning. I mean, that's exactly what we've been calling for. This is a demonstrable example of what we've been talking about, including the 19 or so CEQA bills that I've had the privilege of signing, where we work together in terms of zoning opportunities for affordable housing, 100% affordable housing around transit, focus on issues related to homelessness and critical housing around our home key and room key programs. This is the kind of progress we're making, and this is the kind of example of things we want to continue to see going forward.
And building on that question, are those specific types of carve-outs that are designated for specific projects that meet strict criteria, is that enough, or do you want any sort of broader CEQA reform?
Look, I think we're making I'm going to focus on the progress. This is a big deal today. I do not want anyone to believe or even to suggest this isn't a breakthrough in housing in this state. I think, 4 or 5 years ago, about a year or two prior I got here, I appreciate the leadership, Pro Tem Atkins and others were really out there with Senator Wiener and Governor Brown. We started to see some real progress. There was some momentum in the last few years, but today is a punctuation point. And so I think this kind of progress, and also the sense of purposefulness in terms of the collaborative spirit that defines this moment, I also think will create some momentum going forward, and I want to see continued progress.
Governor Greg Lee from KTVU, you talked about localism and accountability. HCD is investigating San Francisco's processing of permits. Homeless leaders sued the city today regarding the building of affordable housing. What is your comment to the city of San Francisco and other jurisdictions that you may find some opposition
Build housing. Just build housing. It's not even that complicated. It's, Econ 101. Build more housing. Stop talking about it. Enough processing. Be inclusive, be responsible, be respectful of community and those you serve, but move. And just abuse yourselves so we can continue down this pace that we've seen in the past. It's not that complicated. At the end of the day, it's leadership. And we now have created yet another opportunity and set aside another, well, they're running out of excuses. I guess that's a better way of putting it. From money, land use, CEQA, at what point then, now, does that accountability need to be advanced? And I think we've demonstrated now, the state has demonstrated that we can lift the veil of those excuses and we can focus where we need to focus, and that's going local.
Hey, Governor, thanks for talking to us. Jeremy White with Politico. So the deal around these bills, such as it was essentially to send you two bills with different approaches in terms of the labor standards, which, depending who you ask, are either needed or may make it more difficult to build some housing. Is the goal here to advance both approaches, the skilled and trained, the prevailing wage approach, and sort of see which one works and which one could then be the model going forward?
Well, there are 38 bills, so there's not just two bills. I signed two today, but the 38 bills, so it depends on which bill we're referring to. As it relates to different approaches, it relates to commercial and strip malls, it relates to the senator's bill, that's a certain, particular strategy and approach compared to more of these smaller one-off approaches that will be part of 2011. So I think they're different in context that they also are tracking different strategies to solve different problems based upon different land use strategies and different components of the housing crisis and the opportunities that this commercial shift and the macroeconomic shift provides and presents itself. So I don't want to see it in those old binaries. I see this as complementary.
Thanks, Governor. And then on the topic of labor, there's probably no bill that we as reporters are asked more about these days than the farm worker unionization bill.
Yeah.
I understand you're not going to tell me whether you're going to sign or veto it here.
That's why we can ask another question.
But given that you've expressed some concerns about it, I want to give you an opportunity to go into what some of those concerns are.
I appreciate the
as we hear about them.
opportunity, and you've afforded that on multiple occasions. I've got, I think, 400 bills that are waiting for me. And trust me, and what I want to do is escape their lobbying by sneaking out as quickly as I can. But I got 400 bills on my desk, and I've got less than 72 hours. And so we'll be working on that, among many other bills, in the next, when I get back to Sacramento.
Hi, Governor. Ashley Zavala with KCRA 3. In 2018, voters will remember you made a campaign promise of 3.5 million new units of housing by 2025. We know there's been challenges. The pandemic, you mentioned local challenges that the state has seen in making that possible. I think we're at 120,000 new units now that permits were issued for by your administration at this point. Are there any other challenges that you can point to that made this goal really difficult? And also, do you have a renewed goal should voters choose you this upcoming election?
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I've had this privilege on a few dozen occasions, and I'll take advantage of it yet again. And I don't mean that pejoratively, I mean that honestly. When I announced that goal, I didn't make a promise. I said this is the goal that will solve the housing crisis. It wasn't a number that I pulled out of thin air. It was a number that McKinsey had done on the basis of an analysis of many different housing studies. And that was the number that I said at the time was a number that actually will solve the problem. We could put out a number that won't solve the problem, or we could put out a number that would solve the problem. I said it was a stretch goal. And I made the point at the time that it's a goal that in the process of trying to achieve it will allow us to see what's possible. I also said that we would codify that goal more formally through a process called the RHNA process. And we just went through what we referred to, forgive the language, the 6-cycle RHNA. And we put a legal framework forward of 2.5 million units, this goes to the latter part of your question, that we want to secure by 2030. And that's roughly, it's a complicated process, but roughly the numeric. You reference 120,000 units. Let me reference a more specific number. Within the first 6 months of this year, we're on pace of breaking the number of permits for housing, largest number since 2006. We're at 71,236 permits that have been afforded in the first 6 months of this year. We still have more work to do, but I'm enthusiastic about that. You're correct about the macroeconomic issues, the supply chain issues, the issues of the headwinds associated with the last 24 months, and I appreciate that recognition. But we're just winding up, and I'm very enthusiastic. And I think, and I'll close, Michelangelo said it better than any of us. The biggest risk in life, however one defines risk, is not that we aim too high and miss it, it's that we aim too low and reach it. It was always a stretch goal, and we intend to continue to have audacious goals because Californians deserve them.
Thank you. And And then an off-topic one for you. This is our first time interacting, journalists from California, with you since a couple Fridays ago. You tweeted that you would like to debate Governor Ron DeSantis on CNN. Were you serious about that?
Well, of course I am, but tough time to bring that up. And let me just express deep empathy and respect for the challenges that the governor's facing, of course all Floridians are facing. We've offered support, and they know that when they need it, it will be there for them. And we're committed, not just in terms of addressing the urgency of the moment, but the aftermath in terms of the recovery, something in California we know all too well. We are here for our fellow Americans. We're there and will always be there for Floridians and for Governor DeSantis.
Joe Garofoli, San Francisco Chronicle. How you doing, Governor? I want to talk about something you signed yesterday, a piece of some groundbreaking legislation that would transform California into being a national haven for those seeking abortion.
Oh, yeah.
But there are no requirements that California determine how many people are coming from out of state. And how do you do that while still respecting patient privacy, provider privacy, and yet at the same time determining whether the programs you've created with $200 million of money are working, and whether taxpayers and patients and providers are getting what they need?
Well, that's a deeper conversation, one that's difficult in this kind of environment to respond to as comprehensively and appropriate as you'd like. The $200 million is additional resources on top of the historic baseline. No other state in the country doing more for reproductive rights, reproductive women, reproductive freedom than the state of California. We're proud of that, and everybody up here is accountably responsible for that and has delivered in remarkable ways. I'm proud of the package of bills we passed yesterday. I'm proud of the fact that we have the backs of those that are seeking their reproductive rights here in California in a way that will preserve and protect them from prosecution against attorney generals like Paxton and others in states like Texas that seek to criminalize the aiding and abetting of individuals that leave those states to get their reproductive rights in a state like California. And so I'm proud of those protections. I'm proud of the legislative effort. We just signed the bills, and there's a process of application and implementation. But we also have a group of remarkable leaders. We call it the FAB group. It quite literally is FAB group, which is all about accountability, all about making sure those dollars are well resourced and invested. And I think therein lies a framework as it relates to the accountability frame of your question that we would look to their example and their guidance as it relates to making sure those dollars are going where they were intended and the accountability is being secured at the local level. And it's the Future of Abortion group that we put together last year.
Governor Gloria, Tim from ABC7 here. There are a lot of communities in this state. I talked to the folks down in Hillsborough yesterday who are very hesitant to build more housing here. The mayor of Hillsborough said to me that they're planning on building more than 90% ADU units. A lot of folks, as you know, would say that's kind of skirting the state's housing requirements. What do you do when you have communities and residents of these communities who are very hesitant and who are basically encouraging their elected officials to play a game of chicken with the state?
Look, I mean, it's a process that will unfold. I'm not looking to go tit for tat and situational issues. We've been working through a lot of those issues. They're not unique in that respect. You may recall when we sued Huntington Beach almost 4 years ago, there were 46 other jurisdictions that we sent letters to. And that's a process, and it unfolded in a very positive way. The vast majority of those jurisdictions came into compliance under the housing element, and we worked with them to address their local considerations and needs and created the kind of flexibility and appreciation of understanding of those local conditions. And so I just express that as we work through this process. I'm not naive, and I know our time's up, but I'll remind everybody that California is the size of 21 states' populations combined. So when we talk about the state, we recognize the unique characteristic of folks in Lassen County versus folks down in Imperial County. Unique land use and zoning, politics, local opposition, YIMBY, NIMBY, and we have to work through all of that in real time and look forward to working with local leaders down in Atherton, not just Hillsborough, and other parts of the state.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Governor, last question here. My name is Ethan. I'm with the Bay Area News Group. Just to follow up on that, this housing element process the Bay Area is going through right now. I know San Francisco's housing element, their draft was recently rejected. Do you think cities and counties are taking this process seriously enough and giving it enough attention? And if not, what should they be doing?
Many are. Many have been extraordinary, actually. Many are, people have stepped up, but not everybody. And I think, look, you're going to see this, and just a preview as everybody packs up. I have, I think it's 72 plus homeless accountability plans on my desk. This legislature, to their credit, said we're going to continue to provide unprecedented historic money to address the crisis of homelessness, but not without plans and strategies. Cities, counties versus CACs. The whole idea is to get everybody on the same song, same page. It's all about accountability now. We created this new housing accountability unit with the legislature last year. Few thought that was possible, and you're seeing the fruits of that in terms of the work they're doing. They're looking at notes and memorandum. They're looking at schedules. They're looking at what's going on in planning commissions across this state. And we're trying to do more to hold folks to account by shining light. And also elevating those that are doing the right thing. And we'll do that in homelessness, and we'll do that in housing. That's why I said Ben's comment really resonated with me. That the next few years truly is going to be about accountability. For us, yes, but locally. At the end of the day, we need to see local accountability. We will celebrate success, but we're going to call out failure, and we're going to hold local leaders accountable in an enlightened way, not a punitive way, not with a clenched fist, but an open hand, recognizing the support they need, the challenges they face, but again, with a sense of urgency to meet this crisis head on. Thank you to the legislature for meeting it head on. Thank you for the privilege of your time, and thank you for the opportunity to sign these bills today.